Thanks for joining us, man. I'm really excited to have this conversation, and I got to look over some of the mutuals matter things that you guys had sent over, and I not only do I think it's great, I appreciate what you guys are doing. So, but I'll let you dive in and do some background and intros, man, and talk about your wonderful experience.
Sure, happy to. Thank you, Tanner. When you think about bankers helping bankers, this is really mutuals helping mutuals. So I think there's a real tie-in with what you guys are doing at FedFiz and FinTech Cowboys. So I'm Gregg Tewksbury. I work for New Hampshire Mutual Bancorp. We're a multi-bank mutual holding company in New Hampshire. We've got three banks underneath us and a trust company, and trying to do what many community banks around the country are doing, trying to find enough scale play or partner with the right companies so that we find a sustainable, relevant way forward. And that's how we're choosing to do it. Committed to mutuality. And a little background, Tanner, if this is helpful, it is for me in terms of how I'm influenced by mutuality. I grew up starting my banking career with a recently converted mutual bank. I'm not even sure. In fact, I know I wasn't sure that it was a mutual converted. I knew I was being drawn out of public accounting to help a management team grow a bank, and we did it successfully through a lot of acquisition work, organic growth to one of the larger banks in our state and in Massachusetts, and ended up selling it because we got a price that we felt the shareholders would expect us to sell it. That bank, in terms of the community that I lived in, had 65% market share at one point in the whole county. Over the past 20 years, going from 15 branches down to one branch. It's a regional bank, the one that I respect, but the commitment to the community is very different than what the bank that I worked for 20 years ago was, and had, especially our corporate headquarters, a lot of staff. We were the coaches of the Little League team and the finance committee of our churches, and involved in every aspect of the community. That one branch that exists there now for the regional bank can't support the community like the community banks that were there. I left banking, came back 7 years later to take on a role as a CEO of a small mutual bank, and was
Hey, Greg,
yeah, sure, Dave.
just to kind of help everybody understand what a mutual bank is and why they're different.
Sure. Thanks for asking the question. So mutuals were mostly formed between 100 and 150 years ago by community
I
members
remember.
looking for an alternative to the local bank there to take care of the needs of probably the less affluent small business and those who were needed a depository instead of keeping their money under their mattress or in a coffee can in their backyard. And so these, oftentimes there were men, small businessmen, said, if we had another bank, maybe the place that I do business in could prosper more if some of the community members had an alternative. So they provided their own capital to start a mutual bank with no expectation, no legal interest in that bank. So they gifted the money and put it in the hands of professional bankers. Some of those banks still exist today. Today, we have a little over 400 mutual banks in our country that we come to work every day as stewards of these small community banks, with the intent to perpetuate them for generations to come, with no financial interest. I get a paycheck every week, but there's no financial interest in how these banks prosper, other than the enrichment that it provides to the communities that they serve. So that's a mutual bank. A community bank.
Any tax differences or anything like that? Because I'm sure people are going, wait a minute, it sounds like a credit union.
Yeah. I think there's an analogy to a credit union, but we pay our full freight of tax.
That's right. That's it right there.
And so they exist for a different reason, but provides the similar services as other banks and credit unions around the country. So mission based, kind of odd. So this whole nuance, of mutual banks. Those who work in a mutual banks understand the difference and probably were drawn to their mission based purpose. And but most people outside of the mutual banking industry don't know the difference of a mutual bank versus other community banks versus a regional bank or credit union. So the purpose of mutuals matter, was really derived 10 years ago, with conversations that I was having with other bankers saying, there's an opportunity if we could educate the general community about the difference of a mutual bank and use that as an advantage, a competitive advantage, to draw people in that value the same things that the workers of and leaders of community of mutual banks value. So we've all tried to do this ourselves over the years, to use mutuality as a competitive differentiator. But boy, it's hard to do individually when you're trying to promote your own brand and then weave in what mutual banks are all about. And we've all basically failed at educating the community to move the dial in terms of the awareness of what a mutual bank is. And, we do surveys after surveys, and we're not moving the dial. So the idea was born, if we came together, as a kind of our gut milk moment.
A mutual of mutuals, right?
A mutual of mutuals, Dave. You're exactly right. Thinking about if we found a way to advertise mutuality versus our own individual brand, and had strong enough convictions that if the same message and this logo says mutuals matter, your listening audience won't see that, but if everybody could understand that when they saw the mutual logo, that they had a basic understanding that they represent something different, that they exist for the communities in perpetuity. They truly have an interest in, creating the social value of the place that they call home a little bit greater by their efforts at that bank. That if people understood that a little bit more, that as long as, our access, our fee structure, our interest rates, our technology, our service levels are at the same level as other alternatives, for some, it would be a differentiator in them choosing a bank if they knew what mutuals were.
I love that. Man, I really appreciate that. So kind of talk to me like I was a consumer or a businessman. Why would I want to bank there as opposed to, obviously, if I'm a businessman, credit union might not be my thing, but as a consumer, it might. And if I was looking at any other bank, why would I, if I said, I don't get it.
Yeah. I think the best way to think about it as the interdependency of our bank to the communities we serve is very different than most other institutions. If we are strengthened by your doing business with us, and we put those resources back into the community that you're doing business in, the interdependency there allows all ships to rise with this tide. And so we don't pay a dividend because we don't have shareholders. And so most mutual banks, really utilize that difference. Instead of paying your owners that 25 cents on the dollar back in the dividend, we pay it back to our communities, both in volunteerism as well as being, one of the more philanthropic institutions in their town. And we know that comes back to us, in an enriched community, a healthier community. And so I would say, as a business person, understanding that the commitment, not for me as a leader, but for the community that you're doing business in, is a significant differentiator for a bank, why you would want to choose one of our banks. See, it takes a lot of words to do that. So we need a campaign that helps us do that collectively.
You know, Tanner, it's kind of like if a guy was thinking about like that Costner movie, Horizon. You go into a little town that's trying to get off the ground, trying to get built, and you had a couple of guys that had some capital could come together and say, look, we could do so much more if we team up, right? And it's like, I don't know, what community banks on steroid kind of an idea, right? And I know just through all the things that I've done and deal with in life that, you know, it gets really difficult when we start talking about like two mutuals merging together. Whoa, you know, valuation issues and things like that that are really complicated. And, you know, for a business guy, that's, let's just say, you got Tanner's a business guy, super committed to the community, wants to do good things for his community. And I live in Austin. I could give a shit, right? Not my thing. There's plenty of people worried about that. Why would I need to bank with you?
So I think, you know, if as a business person, oftentimes you are an important part of the nonprofit community that you, because it comes back to you again in that social capital in ways that you know are really important to your friends and family and colleagues and neighbors. It's no different with us. Yes, we pay taxes. You know, we're not a nonprofit, but as a mission-based organization trying to do the same things that most nonprofits are trying to do, it's a reason to think about banking with a mutual, because our purpose is different. Our purpose is to create that place that you call home to be a little bit better. You know, it truly is, you know, the Bailey Savings and Loan every day, and it's a wonderful life. It's that's what we go to work to do every day. And we know that the absence of our banks creates a different trajectory in the communities that we live. I've seen it personally, and you don't know it until it's gone. You don't know it until there's a conversion and then ultimate a sale of the bank. And for some, that may be the right decision. But for a whole host of mutual banks around the country, we're committed to finding creative ways to perpetuate our governance and ownership structure. Ownership that is depositors, you know, that have, you know, an interest in the survival of this bank, the thriving of this bank, because their community is going to be a little bit stronger and better because of it.
I'll tell you guys, I've been thinking on this topic. First off, love the whole mission and the theme and everything you talked about. It's near and dear to me. You know, I feel that way about my community, but also feel that way about the community of community banking, you know? So I definitely see and understand. One thing I've been thinking a lot about, guys. So a lot of these small towns right now with, you know, post-COVID world, real estate values through the roof, you've got a lot of business owners that, let's say, are in a location where they don't own the building, and those building values have drastically gone up, right? And so their rent has drastically gone up. And so I think we're kind of coming into an interesting time in the lending space around things like that, certainly in smaller, you know, or think about your bedroom communities, right? Outside of a major metropolitan. Those kind of situations are interesting with maybe those business owners are in a position where they actually want to buy that physical location. And I think we all see that would be smart. Likewise, maybe they're not in a position and doing great, but that's a nice, healthy, thriving business that somebody else wants to buy, right? So I think we've got a time of kind of churn and washout coming in these communities that could be a positive force or a negative one. And I think we need those community institutions to be able to kind of see what's going on and be investing in those things. So it's going to be an interesting time.
Yeah, I see it as an interesting time as well. And I see the community banking space and the mutuals in particular being such an important part of these years ahead. One of the things about mutuals, again, when I talk about, we think about things in such long-term perspectives.
Right.
Perpetuality is a long time, right? So
Instead of 1 quarter, right?
it's not a quarter, it's not a year, it's not even 2 or 3 years. We think about our investments and allocation of resources that need to pay us, a fair return over long periods of time. And I think that we do understand if there's a thriving business where a tenant wants to buy that, we can look past, the initial risks of that. If we believe in that business, we believe in that business owner, and we can believe in that, and knowing the community that business is such a valuable piece of the economics of the locality. It's not taking a flyer. It's just understanding who your local business owners and proprietors are, and other community banks can do that as well. Our difference is we're not beholden to shareholders, so that return, it has to come back to us, but it can take over a longer period of time. I've said, mutual capital is just patient.
Right.
It's unforgiving.
I got for you. So
it's unforgiving. We have to get a good return on it, or we won't be able to invest in the technologies and the talent that are necessary to remain competitive. So we're not sleepy, but we can be patient.
I love it. We're not a sleepy bank. So a couple of questions here. If you guys got in a position to where it would be beneficial, or you had to or needed to, how would a mutual go about raising capital?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm working with a bunch of mutual bankers around the country to have the all of the regulators accept the form of a special deposit or capital certificate, a mutual capital certificate to be issued to investors. So it's funny that this Mutuals Matter is bringing mutual bankers and thought leaders from all over the country together to talk about how can we support one another. Again, you're doing things about helping bankers, and we'll help anyone, but we've got an interest in things like capital for mutual. So I hosted here in New Hampshire a meeting a few weeks ago on January 31st of key regulators from around the country. I mean, Mickey Bowman was here from the Fed, and I had a top leader from the FDIC and one from the OCC and the Conference of State Bank supervisors were all in a room talking about mutual capital. And so I think we're close to having some changes that all of the regulators can see mutual issuing certificates that I think will be one, welcomed by the investing community, and two, more easily than it is today, accepted by the regulators as something other than if we had to go to the subordinated debt market.
Right. So another question I've gotten, this is a burning question I have. CRA. Yeah. Is there some way, because it seems like I don't want to belittle anybody else, but I'd like to put, a pound of gold in your pocket and say, you guys are slightly more committed than even the fanatics, right? You're really in this game all the way to help these communities and do this stuff. Is there something is there a way to earn a CRA credit by doing business with you or investing in you as another banker? Can a banker or a person that's involved in, a fund or anything like that, how can we go about working with you and help get those credits to other people, or can you grant those things? Is that something y'all are talking about?
I think we should talk about that. I'm not sure there's been a lot of conversations about that. Mutuals want to help mutuals. So yeah, when there's subordinated debt being, looked to be raised, I know that there's a lot of people at the desk buying that up and support of it. But relative to CRA, you'd like to think that mutuals would be exempted from that, because that's what we do every day. We're so committed to reinvesting in our communities and using those deposits to loan back, to help helping our communities thrive. But in terms of funds, I'm not sure we've talked about that a great deal, Dave.
I'll tell you what, we'll call Mickey and we'll get old Travis in there and get the rest
Yeah.
of them together. And we ought to sit down and have this conversation, because it
Yep.
seems to me if we had a group of people, a fund or a group of bankers that said, look, I don't necessarily want to go down the CDFI, whatever that call that C-base or the investment group.
CDBA.
So when I go to a CDFI group, similar to your mutual group,
Mhm.
okay, we can make investments in this other instrument and we can get CRA credits there. And it's kind of a cumbersome, complicated thing. And it's really hard to explain to people when you get into the details of it, because it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. Why shouldn't we just be able to give these community CDFIs money and get a credit and get a yield, right? And it seems like you might be in a better spot to simplify the hell out of that and say, gosh, we want to, like you said, issue debt or do whatever, or raise capital in whatever way we want to go about this, where somebody gets, I get a yield back for that investment, but I also get a credit because I'm doing something for you, and your interest is not to grow the capital or do anything with it. It's actually to do more for a community, which is kind of that same game of what CRA is all about in the first place, right? Am I missing it?
Nope, you're not missing it at all. I think that makes perfect sense. Some of us invest in, the issuances of capital that go to an MDI or a CDFI for the purpose of getting CRA credits. But more importantly, we just know those monies are going to do good things.
Right.
And so your point of being able to get a CRA credit if you invested in mutual capital certificates make perfect sense to me. I think that should be part of, as we rewrite, these capital opportunities for mutuals, getting CRA credits into that should be a focus. I love that idea.
We'd really like to take this conversation further if you're interested, and we'll help you guys in any way. I think what your mission is noble, beyond noble. I think there's a hole and a gap in the marketplace. And honestly, I've always felt this way. I just have a huge fear every time I hear mutuals wanting to merge or mutual going away. And it's like, and I don't think that many people really get it.
Yep.
And also it's like, that's why I'll hit those questions right. What's the difference in that credit? What's the difference between that and the CDFI? And it's like, there's a lot of things here that are unique. And I agree with you. Everybody doesn't get it. That uniqueness relates directly to this economy, right? Let's just say it's a community economy. What does it need? Nobody knows better than you what it needs. And sometimes, hey, we live in a time right now where, hey, we're finding zillions of dollars of wasteful spending on crazy shit everywhere. And, that's a good thing, right? And we get rid of some of those things, but at the same time, there's positive things. And I'm okay. I'm going to sound like a bad guy when I say this, but I'm not really into building parks and stuff,
Yep.
I'm just like, we helped the community. We built an education center for whatever, right? Or we did this or that. And it's like, did it really? There's 7 kids that got helped. Or
Yep.
got to go play a little while in the park for a few years, and that was it. It's not like you built the NFL here, man. I mean, we didn't do anything big, but we spent a hell of a lot of money doing it. And I'm not sure that that's almost synonymous with this wasteful spending conversation that we're all involved in right now. And it seems to me that there should be a way that we can benefit a lot more people through the activities and the things that you already do. So you're trying to build commerce. And I'll tell you right now, I've always told everybody, it's kind of like that teach a guy to fish instead of, right? That if you build an opportunity, and I've sold this to people so many times, and I know so many guys that are good at this, when you can give an opportunity, I mean, like give somebody an opportunity. I think back in my life, man, I'll sit down and bet you $5 and race you in a 40-yard dash. I love competition and I'm all about it, but I need a chance, man. All I need is a chance, right? There are so many people out there that are full of ambition and really want to have the drive to do good things. Maybe they just need some of the things we don't teach in school, like how to start a business, little things like that. But these investments in a community pay off exponentially over time. And I know you know that better than anybody. And I love this concept.
Hey, Greg,
Yeah, Tanner.
give you a couple of minutes for final thoughts. I know we covered a lot of ground, but I would also really love it if you would talk or touch on just a little bit. What do you guys need at Mutuals Matter?
Yes.
Right. So whether it's fintechs or other community banks or all the rest of us, what kind of help do you need?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that. Looking for any way that we can find partners to get the message about what mutual banks are out there. Mm-hmm. So if it's taking some of our materials and finding a way to broadcast them through your channels, I've been invited to certain trade groups, to put a booth there and at a very low price to be able to help the mutuals. I think most people recognize that if we can collectively find ways to help, these are smaller banks in many cases around the country, thrive, then we all benefit from that. Yes, we are part of the commerce, we're part of the economics. Every dollar that comes into our bank, we can leverage it tenfold. You can't do that in any other, business model. And you're right, Dave. Investing into these mutual banks allows for the prosperity of your local area to grow exponentially that you can't, with other donations, because we can do something with that, and we're responsible. We've been around for a long time and understand how to responsibly lend that money if it comes in the form of capital or deposits. But I think, partnering in terms of getting, right now, we've only been doing this for a few months. We're trying to get banks signed up, and we've got an asset center with all of the materials out there for them to use.
Real quick, you said trying to get banks signed up.
Yep. So
to become mutuals or signed up to be part of your
mutual banks in our country to join Mutuals Matter. It's a small fee, but it allows us to continue to build the collateral out there for them to use to supplement their own marketing in terms of trying to educate the communities about what a mutual bank is. And so,
one I can take, guys, is I think having some conversations with the technology providers about just, special treatment for mutuals, right? I think there's some things that people be willing to commit to, whether that's discounts or, things like that. I think that's something we can work on together.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That would be very helpful. Yeah. Again, it's an education opportunity. We're passionate about what we do because it does drive commerce. A mutual bank that goes away, gets merged away, they choose to go public. It's one way. They will never get that charter back. We're not creating a lot more mutuals in our country, and so every time we lose one, the social fabric of the community in the United States, I think, goes southward. And so to the extent that collaboratively we can work together to preserve these, it's not about me. It's not about, my board, or there's nothing in it for us other than our strong conviction that if these banks find their way to a different ownership structure over a period of time, our communities will lose. And so I appreciate the fintechs helping us understand that. If there's the discounts, if there's mechanisms to get the word out to others about what a mutual bank is, then informed consumers will say, yeah, that doesn't matter to me. That's okay. But we believe that more would say that matters now that I understand the difference. And there's a burning platform. I'm looking to change banks. I'm looking for different alternatives. I'd like to understand who those mutuals are out there for me to consider whether they've got the right, offerings for my business or my personal needs at this juncture.
You bet.
Are there any other actions that you'd like to see banks or the public or businesses take to help?
Well, I think we've the whole regulatory burden issue is clear.
Yeah, man.
our banks are under examination right now. It's going well, but the resources we commit, to that is, just takes money away from what we can do to help our communities thrive. So that's just a drum we need to continue to pound. And, we've got some ears right now that I think are helpful. What you guys are doing, educating the smaller community banks about how to compete using good technology, using good data, is going to be an important aspect of being relevant over periods of time. We're competing with large data shops, and if we don't know what we're buying is being used effectively, and help us with some of those buying decisions, I think that's what we can partner to help each other, make sure that we're prioritizing our resources effectively.
Happy to help.
You can count on that for sure when it comes to anything that you guys, when you bring your groups together, if there's things that we could ever do to help, happy to do that. I know Tanner's willing to do that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I think it's funny in this conversation, sitting from my perspective, because I love my community. I love the idea of communities. I love community banking and mutuals and all that. I just happen to be the technology guy. So this is how I help, man. So
yeah,
happy to do so.
Well, I appreciate that. And
hey, I really enjoyed having this conversation, Greg. And I think I know I learned some things there. I'm sure that everybody else did too. So this is great. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, well, I look forward to working together and continuing to, help the community banking space thrive in our country, because it's going to be important to, again, the place that I call home.
You bet.
I love that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
See you guys later.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.